The cornerback position is one of, if not the hardest positions to play in the NFL. To be able to go mano-a-mano against some of the best athletes in the world, running towards you at full speed while you're backpedaling and trying to mimic every one of their moves, not only takes extreme athleticism, but mental fortitude as well. So when you're able to sustain an entire season of lockdown play as a cornerback in the NFL, it's an extremely impressive feat. And there have been many memorable cornerback seasons throughout the history of the NFL. I mean, we just witnessed Pat Surtain win Defensive Player of the Year last season. But amongst all of the great cornerback seasons we've seen throughout the years, there's one that stands above the rest, and that is the 2009 season from Darrelle Revis. I mean, this season started the moniker of Revis Island, which is one of the most iconic nicknames of all time across all sports. But exactly how good was this season from Revis? And how does it compare to the other great cornerback seasons in NFL history? In this video, we're going to take Darrelle Revis' 2009 season through the Cornerback Challenge Tower to see if he can make it past each level and eventually make it all the way to the top. In each of these matchups, I'm going to compare a key aspect of each of these players' respective peak seasons, whether that's receiver matchups, receptions allowed to target ratio, interceptions, PFF or advanced analytical profile, responsibility within their respective defensive schemes, and more. So without further ado, let's check out Revis' round 1 matchup to see how he fares.
Round 1. Fight!
The first matchup is 2009 Darrelle Revis against 2019 Stephon Gilmore. Now this first matchup is no walk in the park. Stephon Gilmore won Defensive Player of the Year in 2019, being the first defensive back to win the award since Charles Woodson 10 years prior. According to an article from The Athletic, through the first 14 games of the 2019 season, Gilmore was targeted 67 times, giving up only 24 receptions for 280 yards. He didn't allow a touchdown in those 14 games, but returned 2 of his 6 interceptions for touchdowns. Gilmore allowed a passer rating of 32.8 when he was targeted and broke up 14 passes through the first 14 games, and ended the season with 20 pass deflections. And according to this article, the Patriots played more man coverage than any other team in the league, often leaving Gilmore to go one-on-one with the other team's best receiver. But the article later states that the Patriots don't always put Gilmore on the opposing team's best receiver. Sometimes they'll have him play one-on-one with an opponent's number 2 receiver and double their number 1. But the thing is, even if he did line up against the best receiver week in and week out in 2019, these assignments don't really compare to the receivers that Revis had to line up against in 2009. For reference, the best receivers that Gilmore lined up against in the 2019 season were Amari Cooper, OBJ, DeAndre Hopkins, and Tyreek Hill. So comparing this list of names to the receivers that Revis lined up against in 2009, I think you can see why Revis wins this first matchup. Andre Johnson, Randy Moss, Terrell Owens, Steve Smith, Roddy White, Reggie Wayne, and Ocho Cinco. Those names were some of the best wide receivers not only of that era, but of all time. Not only were these some incredibly notable names, but Darrelle Revis would always line up against the other team's best receiver week in and week out. And this is no shade, because even in their best seasons, the most elite cornerbacks will still get beat. But Devontae Parker went out for 7 catches and 119 yards when lined up against Gilmore, including 3 catches allowed on the Dolphins' final game-winning drive. So based off the matchups that Stephon Gilmore and Darrelle Revis were assigned, this first round matchup goes to 2009 Darrelle Revis.
Round 2. Fight!
The second matchup is between 2009 Darrelle Revis and 2008 Nnamdi Asomugha. There's a bit of a stain on Asomugha's career due to his short time spent in Philly after receiving a 5-year, $60 million deal and being cut after only 2 seasons. But the stretch of play that Nnamdi Asomugha put on from 2007 to 2010 was truly shut-down corner type of play. During this 4-season stretch, he was targeted 112 times and only allowed 41 completions, with 0 touchdowns allowed during that time. Now, any one of these seasons could have been a candidate for this exercise, but I decided to go with Asomugha's 2008 season to fight against 2009 Darrelle Revis. According to his Wikipedia page, in 2008, Nnamdi Asomugha was targeted 27 times and only allowed 8 interceptions, which is an insanely low number for a starting cornerback. He also had 9 pass deflections and supposedly only let up more than 1 completion during the 2008 season to only Randy Moss and Tony Gonzalez. Nnamdi did only haul in 1 interception, which makes sense because he rarely had any opportunities to make plays on the ball. With only 27 balls thrown his way, that should tell you a lot about how offenses respected Nnamdi, with Bill Belichick saying that he was as complete of a corner as he has seen all year. But there are a couple things that should be brought up from this season from Nnamdi and the situation that he was playing in. 1. Nnamdi didn't usually shadow the opponent's best wide receiver. Rather, he stuck mostly on the right side of the defense, which sees a lot less targets across the NFL. This was the opposite for Revis in 2009, as he shadowed the other team's best receiver throughout the entire game, having sole responsibility for that matchup. Revis is what made the 2009 Jets defense move. His ability to shut down the opposing team's best receiving threat allowed Rex Ryan to call a lot of blitzes and bring pressure to the quarterback. Also, the Raiders' run defense was terrible in 2008, letting up the second most rushing yards in the league, and their offense wasn't great either, ranking 29th in points per game, so opposing teams had less motivation to throw the ball regardless. Even though this season was still incredibly impressive from Nnamdi Asomugha and shouldn't be taken lightly, I'm going to give Revis this win here due to proven production at the cornerback position in 2009 and overall bigger burden of responsibility within the Jets' defensive scheme.
Round 3. Fight!
The third matchup is between 2009 Revis and 1993 Rod Woodson. We have another Defensive Player of the Year season in 1993 Rod Woodson. This season from Rod was nothing short of incredible. 0 touchdowns allowed, 8 interceptions, and 32.8 passer rating when targeted. But was it better than Revis' season? For this matchup, we're going to look at the receptions allowed to target ratio for both of these corners in their respective peak seasons. Also, I want to give a huge shout out to Nick Webster, who did an incredible deep dive into Rod Woodson's 1993 season, including game-by-game stats, examples of Woodson's coverage throughout the season, and more. I'll be leaning on his analysis for this matchup. First, let's look at Rod's numbers. During the 1993 season, Rod Woodson was targeted 56 times, giving up 27 completions for 414 yards and a completion percentage of 47.3. How about Revis? In 2009, Revis was targeted nearly twice as much as Woodson at 111 targets, but only allowed 41 receptions, which is the fewest number of receptions for any corner with 80+ targets, for a completion percentage of 36.9%. Usually, when you're getting targeted that much in a season, that's an indictment on your ability as an NFL cornerback. But that's, of course, not the case for Revis. Cornerback play can be so volatile. So Revis giving up a completion percentage nearly 10% less than Woodson on pretty much double the targets gives him the win in this matchup and advances him to round 4.
Round 4. Fight!
The fourth matchup is between Darrelle Revis and 1994 Deion Sanders. 1994 Deion Sanders was another Defensive Player of the Year from a cornerback, winning the award off of the heels of the aforementioned 93 season from Rod Woodson. This was a legendary season for Deion. This was his first and only year in San Francisco, where he won his first Super Bowl and finished the regular season with 6 interceptions for an insane 303 return yards and 3 touchdowns, which included 2 touchdowns off of 90+ yard returns. But the question still stands. Was this a better season than 2009 Revis? Now, before we get into the comparison, it's also important to note that Deion only played 14 games this season, missing the first 2 weeks of the NFL season due to obligations with the Cincinnati Reds in what turned out to be a strike-shortened season. According to this video from NFL Matchup Highlights on YouTube, Deion ended the 94 season with 57 targets and 24 completions allowed for 317 yards. Comparing this to Revis, who again ended the 2009 season with 111 targets for 41 completions allowed for 425 yards. And yes, 6 interceptions with 3 pick sixes is amazing. But Revis also had 6 interceptions in the 2009 season, returning 1 for a pick 6. Revis also recorded 54 tackles this season compared to Sanders' 36. Comparing the yards per target between these two players, Sanders ended the 94 season with 5.56 yards per target, while Revis ended the 09 season with 3.83 yards per target. The lower yards per target, combined with the lower completion percentage allowed, combined with the fact that he kept both of these numbers lower while playing 2 more games, combined with a better crop of receivers that he lined up against throughout the season, makes me lean Revis once again in this tightly contested matchup.
Round 5. Fight!
This 5th matchup is between 2 performances that took place during the same season. 2009 Charles Woodson versus 2009 Darrelle Revis. This matchup literally happened in real time, and we saw these 2 players duking it out all year for the Defensive Player of the Year award. Charles Woodson ended up winning the DPOY in 2009, and if we just left it at that, then Woodson would be moving on to the final round. But not so fast. Let's lay out the case for both of these players. In 2009, Charles Woodson recorded 9 interceptions with 3 pick sixes, had 4 forced fumbles, 2 sacks, 4 QB hits, 74 tackles, and 18 pass deflections. Now, if you're thinking that this stat line sounds more like a safety or maybe even a linebacker, then you wouldn't be too far off. The 2009 season from Charles Woodson wasn't your typical cornerback season. The Packers utilized Woodson all over the field, taking advantage of his versatility and using him wherever the team felt like he could make an impact. Sometimes that was at outside corner, other times it was in the slot, other times it was at safety, and sometimes it was even playing in the box to provide run support or to get pressure on the quarterback. So if we were just looking at the overall most impactful season, this matchup will go to Charles Woodson. And I think that's also the rationale of why he eventually won the Defensive Player of the Year award. But we're looking for the best cornerback season. We've already gone through the targets and completions allowed for Revis, and I couldn't find an accurate set of numbers for Charles Woodson's 2009 season beyond this one Reddit post that said he allowed 46 receptions on 84 targets, giving up 7 touchdowns. So instead, let's see what PFF has to say. I know, PFF, boo. But at least PFF is grading the same season for the same position. So in 2009, Revis earned a plus 34.6 grade in coverage, nearly doubling Woodson's grade of plus 19.4. Revis also earned a 97.6 overall PFF grade for his performance in 2009, which beats out Woodson's 91.7 overall PFF grade. Revis' 2009 season graded out as by far the best since the start of the PFF era in 2006 to 2016. So if we're just evaluating performance at the cornerback position and matching up these respective cornerback seasons, although Charles Woodson beat out Revis in 2009 for Defensive Player of the Year, he will not be beating him out here for the 5th matchup, which sends Revis Island to the final round.
Final round. Fight!
This final matchup gives us 2009 Darrelle Revis against 2006 Champ Bailey. Let's first take a look at the receivers that these corners matched up against during their respective peak seasons. As a reminder, here are the receivers that Revis lined up against during each week of the 2009 season. Now, I couldn't get a definitive answer if Champ Bailey has always lined up against the other team's best receiver in 2006, with some results saying that he did, while others saying that he primarily played on the left side of the defense during the game. Here's a list of the Broncos' opponents' number 1 receivers during the 2006 season. Both of these cornerbacks faced some great receiver talent during their respective peak seasons, but I'm going to give the slight edge to Darrelle Revis' matchups over Bailey, also taking into consideration that Revis shadowed these receivers all game, each week. But this comparison can't be the end-all be-all, because you can only play who's on your schedule. So let's look at the production that both of these players had in their respective peak seasons. First, let's look at how many times each of these corners were targeted and how many catches that they allowed in 16 games. This time, let's start with Champ. There's a myth around this season from Champ Bailey that he only allowed 4 catches during the entire 2006 season. And I hate to break it to you, but that's just not true. Although it is a sick myth to have on your resume, this was actually something that Ron Jaworski stated on a 2006 Monday Night Football preseason broadcast, so it wouldn't even apply to the 2006 season anyways. I couldn't find a definitive answer to how many times Champ was targeted and how many receptions he allowed, but from this thread on the 2+2 forum from 2010, one of the comments states that the 2007 Pro Football Prospectus listed Champ Bailey getting targeted 86 times in 2006, with 33 completions allowed, resulting in a completion percentage of 38%. That lines up closely with the target and receptions allowed figures, also seen in this Reddit thread, so we're going to go with those numbers. Although those are still amazing numbers for your team's number one cornerback, Revis still beats out Champ with a lower completion percentage allowed of 36.9% on 25 more targets. Revis also had 10 more pass deflections than Champ Bailey, racking up 31 pass deflections in 2009, while Champ had 21 pass deflections in 2006. How about interception production? As mentioned before, Revis had 6 interceptions in the 2009 season. How many did Champ have in 2006? 10. A ridiculous 10 interceptions. Not only is this ridiculous interception volume, but 9 of his 10 interceptions were in the red zone, with 3 of those picks coming in the end zone. Champ also recorded more total tackles with 86, which beats out 54 tackles from Revis in 2009. And in terms of passer rating allowed, Champ Bailey allowed a passer rating of 34.5, which is amazing. But Revis beats him out again, allowing a passer rating of 32.5 when targeted. Lastly, I just wanted to share some quotes from other players in the league when talking about these two cornerbacks and the respect that they've earned from their peers. Steve Smith on Champ Bailey. If I lined up in the slot, he lined up in the slot. If I lined up as a running back, he lined up as a linebacker. If I parked my car in the parking lot, he was the parking attendant. Champ Bailey lined up everywhere. Ocho Cinco in 2021 speaking on Darrelle Revis. I try to study you too. That shit ain't work though. Sometimes you study for a test in life, and sometimes no matter how much you study, you fail. Ocho Cinco later says in that video with tears in his eyes, he's the best corner I've ever faced, and I haven't recovered. Although Champ beats out Revis with a number of interceptions and tackles during their respective peak seasons, I still have to give the win to Revis Island in this final matchup, officially getting past each level in the Cornerback Challenge Tower. I don't know if we'll ever see another cornerback season like 09 Revis, but I sure hope we get close so we can keep on adding new competitors to challenge him for his crown.